Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys are all doing well. The news has broke. Erik ten Hag has been sacked as Manchester United manager after 2 and a bit years, after the FA Cup win last summer, after the League Cup win the season before that. Erik ten Hag has left Manchester United. He's broken his own record this season of Manchester United's worst start to a Premier League season. The worst start to a Premier League season in living memory for me. In a league season even, in living memory for me. It's been a horrendous start in the league for Manchester United. We haven't won in Europe for over a year now as well. The records aren't looking good. He keeps breaking all the wrong records and he has been sacked as Manchester United manager, and we'll be getting stuck in to the reaction to that, to the statement that's been put out by the club, and to what's going on next as we find out who will be interim manager for Manchester United. But Erik ten Hag sacked. It is official. It is done. I was doing the club podcast when the news broke from David Ornstein. And I can't lie, my initial reaction to it was one of a little bit of shock, a bit of sadness, a little bit of, I expected it. It had to come. So a little bit of relief as well. It was a mixture of feelings because obviously Erik ten Hag is someone that I've wanted to do well. I always want managers to do well, to be honest. I always try and give them as much time as possible and try and, get through the difficult times because managers are always going to face them. But he's had far too many difficult times. And you look at some of the performances, and I don't mean the West Ham performance either, because you look at that game and you go, wow, the players should have taken their chances. The penalty decision was horrendous. Like, you can kind of explain that in the 90 minutes, but the rest of the season has been inexplicable. Look at that performance against Tottenham Hotspur. That was when I knew it was over for him. You have these moments with managers. I had it with Mourinho, the Sevilla game. I remember just feeling like, oh, this is done. This is. I don't know how much longer it's going to last for between now and him getting sacked, but this is definitely done. And that's how I felt again after the Tottenham game, because Tottenham's one of those games where we're at Old Trafford for starters, and Tottenham's a big enough game where you got to get up for it, but it's also a winnable game. It's not like you play Man City, Arsenal, or Liverpool where you're thinking, oh, geez, these are going to be difficult. Going into a game against Spurs at Old Trafford, you always think you're going to win, no matter how our form is. But it's also a game where you've got to be up for it. And the atmosphere that day, you can tell the fans have kind of started to check out of this project. The performance from the team was abysmal. And I know we had Bruno Fernandes sent off, and the manager keeps alluding to this, going, it was the incorrect decision. Bruno's red card was overturned, so I kind of discard that result. You can't discard that result because the performance before Bruno Fernandes was sent off was heading in one direction. And that was Manchester United getting beat at Old Trafford by Tottenham Hotspur. A Tottenham Hotspur side that, whilst they've had some decent results, are also under pressure this season. It's kind of going under the radar because of Manchester United and how bad we're being and how bad Erik ten Hag has been, and he's kind of taking all the headlines as you'd expect a Manchester United manager to do. They've gone under the radar as how poor they've been. But guess what? They beat us. You know how poor West Ham have been this season? They got battered by Chelsea, battered by City, battered by Liverpool, Spurs, I think. Like, they've been beat by pretty much everyone they've come across this season. Lopetegui is under pressure for his job. Guess what? They beat Manchester United. It just happens with all these teams. They manage to get the result that they haven't had all season, or get a performance they haven't had all season, and they seem to get it against Manchester United. You look at our record in Europe, we've not won in over a year. And think back to some of those performances. And the only team actually that I look at in that European run and think, yeah, we probably shouldn't be beating them, is Bayern Munich. Because you look at the rest of the teams, Galatasaray, Copenhagen. How the hell were we not at least second in that group? How did that... It was baffling. You look at some of the performances in Europe against the teams we've faced this time around. FC 20. Fenerbahce, who were pretty poor. I know they had Mourinho and Fred and all this kind of stuff, but pretty poor. We went up against a midfield of players that we didn't want at Manchester United, and we lost. We lost. And you look at some of the signings, like, I criticise him for the Antony signing. I thought that was the worst signing I've ever seen in a Manchester United make. But you look at some of the other signings we've made, with his decision-making involved in them as well. Now, I think a lot of the recent signings we've made, I think it's been a collaborative decision. I think he has had a say in them. But you look at them and you think Lenny Yoro, really good signing for the future, potentially. You look at a few of those and you go, I can understand them ones. But some of the decisions we've made, and whilst not all his fault, he did play a part in them. Now, I don't think he rushes into wanting Anthony and Casemiro at £140 million if Manchester United weren't about to spend God knows what on Rabiot and Arnautovic. He kind of got forced into those decisions. But the fact is, he identified Anthony, and Anthony's one of the worst players I've ever seen. And you live and die by the success of your transfers. And unfortunately, some of the key transfers that we've made haven't paid off for him. Yes, I think Lisandro Martinez is a good player. I think De Ligt will go on and do well. Mazraoui's been okay. We haven't had a left back for how long? We let Alvaro Fernandez go to Benfica. Guess who's tearing it up? Alvaro Fernandez. Well, we haven't got a left back. That decision is baffling as well. We signed Ugarte. You can count Ugarte's minutes in the Premier League on both hands. He hasn't seen game time. Why is that? We bring in a brand new player who is supposedly going to come in and change the way we're playing. Casemiro's under pressure. We get rid of McTominay. And you don't play him. At least if you're playing your new signings, you can go, you know what? I understand maybe they're not getting things right because they're trying to bed these players in. But you haven't even given him an opportunity. Amad Diallo. So baffling. Somehow he takes Rashford off against West Ham after 50-odd minutes and brings Amad Diallo in. But Amad Diallo was a player that you didn't have faith in for the rest of the couple of weeks before that. You see his face coming on like a smacked arse. He's not keeping the players happy either. And onside, the football that we're playing, we're holding Rashford back to try and get Diogo Dalot breaking into these. Why would you do that? Why would you, tactically, how does that make any sense? You look at the positioning of our fullbacks throughout the season. I know it's changed in the last couple of weeks, but it's because it had to. We're leaving Lisandro Martinez alone at the back to cover the whole left-hand side of the pitch. How does that make any sense? And people say they don't think he had a style of play at Manchester United, but I think that was his style of play. The reason we saw Manchester United getting turned over so many times, the reason why we thought Casemiro was done last season, the reason why we look poor no matter who we select, and I actually think Lisandro Martinez, De Ligt, is a pretty good centre-back partnership. Mazraoui, Dalot, not bad fullbacks, but we look a shambles every time, no matter who we play at the back. That's because we're getting turned over. How often do you see our defenders running, facing their own goal? Every single fucking week, there's big spaces behind there. And if these things aren't addressed, and these things aren't worked on, and you don't see an improvement in the football, ultimately you have to come to make a decision. And that decision has now been made. And Erik ten Hag has left Manchester United. Now, the man that's coming in is Ruud van Nistelrooy, who is going to be in the role as the interim. This is the official statement from Manchester United. Erik ten Hag has left his role as Manchester United men's first team manager. Erik was appointed in April 2022 and led the club to 2 domestic trophies, winning the Carabao Cup in 2023 and the FA Cup in 2024. We are grateful to Erik for everything he has done during his time with us and wish him well for the future. Ruud van Nistelrooy will take charge of the team as interim head coach, supported by the current coaching team, while a permanent head coach is recruited. Now, I don't know where the hell we're going to go next. I wouldn't be surprised to see them take their time. I wouldn't be surprised to see us go into the new year, 2025, without an official permanent manager in place. Now, I think Erik ten Hag is actually a good coach. Louis van Gaal was, Jose Mourinho was. All these people were good coaches. They crumbled under the pressure of Manchester United, and they crumbled because of the issues that Manchester United had above the manager. Erik ten Hag's another one. Sure, he'll go and have a decent career elsewhere. It's not going to be at Man United, though. The reason I say that is, though, we have to make sure that Ruud van Nistelrooy isn't just allowed to sit there and potentially become permanent manager. We have to show some long-term thinking. Ruud van Nistelrooy may well be a really talented coach. Ruud van Nistelrooy may be someone who's going to go on and have a great career. But if he wins a couple of games, I don't want to see this rush to kind of appoint him, because it shows like a lack of thinking. We have to try and think and try and make a decision that's going to be for the long term. Nobody wants to be here in 12 months trying to turn on Ruud van Nistelrooy. That's not where I need to be. Whilst at the same time, I think the next 4 games are winnable. We've got 4 home games coming up, two games against Leicester, 1 included in the cup. We've got Chelsea at home and we got PAOK. We should be winning those games, and maybe there'll be a spike in performance. There'll definitely be a spike in terms of the fans and how we're approaching the game. But we need to get that appointment right. There's been talk about Amorim, talk about Thomas Frank, talk about all these different managers. We need to make sure we're getting the next appointment right. It's Ruud van Nistelrooy for now, though. But Ten Hag is gone, and I can't lie. I seen it coming when he kept talking about the FA Cup and League Cup, when he kept talking about, I'm not counting the Spurs game because when you start to do all these things, you could just see the writing was on the wall. And I think the right decision has been made, as sad as it is to kind of go through this whole chopping and changing every 2 years. Unfortunately, it had to be done. And now's the time for Ineos to really get their act together, because this is their first appointment of a manager. It's time to show what you've got. The Baradas, Ashworths, Wilcox, all these guys. Let's see what you've got, because this is your first big decision you're going to have to make at Man United, and it has to be the right one. Anyway, see you in a bit.